High Commander Marcus stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Glory, his silver uniform gleaming under the soft blue lights. His thin fingers traced the edge of his command console as he watched the holographic display of yet another successful conquest. 300 systems had fallen to the Galactic Empire, and none had offered more than token resistance. "Commander," his communication officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Sol system." Marcus smiled. The Sol system was next on their path of expansion. Their scouts had reported a developing civilization there, barely able to reach their own moon when first discovered. Now, after 50 years of observation, they had managed to establish colonies on Mars and were taking their first steps into deep space. "Put it through," he ordered, expecting the usual pleading for mercy or desperate offerings of surrender. The hologram flickered to life, showing a simple military command room. A group of humans stood there, wearing plain blue uniforms without any of the decorative elements that marked Imperial attire. Their message was short and delivered in a calm, almost casual tone. "Your expansion stops here. Turn back, or face extinction." Laughter erupted across the bridge. Even Marcus couldn't help but smile at their boldness. These humans, with their primitive ships and basic energy weapons, daring to threaten the mighty Galactic Empire. "Send them our standard response," Marcus commanded, turning away from the hologram. The standard response was simple, a demonstration of Imperial power. 50 warships would enter their system, display their superior technology, and accept their surrender. "Sir," his tactical officer spoke up, "there's something else. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies, in all known languages of the Empire." Marcus turned back, his interest piqued. "Show me." The main screen filled with thousands of transmissions, all carrying the same message in different languages. But what caught Marcus's attention were the data packets attached to each transmission. They contained detailed information about human history, their wars, their weapons, their tactics. "They're sending us their military history," Marcus asked, puzzled. His intelligence officer, Thomas, stepped forward. "Sir, I've analyzed the data. It's concerning. These humans have fought more wars among themselves in their recorded history than the Empire has fought in its entire existence. They're primitives." Marcus dismissed the concern. "What do their internal conflicts matter?" "Sir," Thomas persisted, "look at these numbers. In just one of their global conflicts, they lost more soldiers than the Empire has lost in all its conquests combined. They've developed weapons that can destroy entire cities, tactics that defy conventional warfare, and they've done this all while fighting among themselves." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "And yet they still use chemical rockets and projectile weapons. Their ships can barely reach relativistic speeds. They're centuries behind us." "Perhaps," Thomas agreed, "but there's something else. This isn't just military history they're sending us. It's a warning, carefully crafted to show us something specific." He paused, pulling up more data. "In every major conflict in their history, the technologically superior force often lost to the more adaptable one." Marcus studied the data more carefully now. The humans had included detailed accounts of empires falling to barbarians, of massive armies defeated by smaller forces, of advanced weapons rendered useless by simple countermeasures. Each account was clearly chosen to send a message. "They're not threatening us," Thomas explained. "They're warning us. They're trying to prevent a war." Marcus stood in silence for a moment, considering this. Then he laughed again, but this time the sound carried a hint of nervousness. "Prepare the diplomatic fleet. We'll show these humans what real power looks like." As the orders went out and ships began preparing for the jump to the Sol system, Thomas made one final observation. "Sir, there's one more thing. All these transmissions, all this data, they're not sending it from their military command centers or government facilities. Where are they sending it from? Their entertainment networks, their historical archives, their public data channels." Thomas looked up from his screen. "Everything they've shown us, every battle, every war, every tactic, They teach this to their children. Their entire species grows up studying warfare. Marcus dismissed the warning, but as he watched his fleet prepare for departure, a small voice in the back of his mind wondered if perhaps, just this once, the Empire should listen. They didn't know it yet, but this would be the last time the Empire would ignore a human warning. The Imperial diplomatic fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 50 massive warships arranged in the Empire's standard diamond formation. Their silver hulls gleamed in the distant sunlight, each ship bigger than the largest human space station. On the bridge of the lead ship, Commander Robert watched the tactical display with growing confusion. "Where are their defenses?" he asked. The space around Earth seemed almost empty, with only a scattered collection of small ships moving in apparently random patterns. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "we're detecting numerous small vessels, but they're not in any formal military formation. Most appear to be civilian ships." Robert frowned. This wasn't how first contact battles usually went. Most civilizations would gather their entire fleet in a desperate show of force, trying to intimidate the Empire. Instead, the humans seemed to be going about their normal business, their ships moving between planets and stations, as if the Imperial fleet wasn't even there. "Send the standard warning," Robert ordered. "Let them know they have 1 hour to surrender before we begin our demonstration of force." The message was sent, and the bridge crew waited confidently. Minutes passed. No response came. "Sir," the communication officer spoke up, "we're receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Play it." A calm voice filled the bridge. "This is Admiral James Stone of the Earth Defense Force. You were warned. Remember that." Before Robert could respond, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Sir, energy readings everywhere. The civilian ships, they're not civilian." The scattered human vessels suddenly changed course, all at once, moving with purpose now. But they weren't gathering to fight. Instead, they were moving away, creating a clear zone of space around the Imperial fleet. "What are they doing?" Robert wondered aloud. Then his eyes widened as he realized the truth. "It's a kill zone. Full shields, evasive." His order came too late. Space itself seemed to tear open around the Imperial fleet as hundreds of small devices, previously hidden among the asteroids and debris, activated at once. They weren't bombs or missiles. They were gravity wells, tiny artificial black holes that existed for just seconds before collapsing. The Imperial ships, designed to withstand any conventional attack, had no defense against the very fabric of space being twisted around them. 5 ships were torn apart instantly, their advanced hulls crumpling like paper. "Impossible," Robert shouted. "Their technology level. They shouldn't have this capability." But the gravity weapons were just the beginning. As the Imperial fleet scattered in confusion, the human ships attacked. They didn't use energy weapons or antimatter torpedoes like the Empire expected. Instead, they launched what appeared to be simple metal containers. "Sir, those containers. They're full of nanobots," the science officer reported, his voice shaking. "They're eating through our hulls. The Empire's mighty shields, designed to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles, did nothing against the microscopic machines that were now consuming their ships from the outside in." 3 more ships fell silent, their systems consumed by the ravenous nanobots. "Launch fighters," Robert commanded. It was a desperate move. Fighters were usually saved for atmospheric combat, but he had to do something. The fighters launched, only to be met by small automated drones that moved with impossible speed and precision. The Imperial pilots, used to fighting in strict formations, were overwhelmed by the chaos of individual drone combat. "Sir," his tactical officer reported grimly, "we've lost contact with 20 ships. The others are reporting critical system failures. These humans, they're not fighting fair." Robert watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any of the normal rules of engagement. The humans never formed up for a proper battle, never engaged in ship-to-ship combat, never gave them a chance to demonstrate their superior firepower. As his own ship systems began to fail, Robert sent one final transmission to Imperial Command. The humans, they didn't build their technology to look impressive. They built it to kill. They warned us. They actually warned us. The remaining Imperial ships attempted to retreat, but only 7 made it back to hyperspace. As they fled, they received one final transmission from Admiral Stone. Next time, listen when someone warns you to run. In the debris field that was once the mighty Imperial diplomatic fleet, the small human ships began their cleanup operation. They had made their point. The real war hadn't even started yet. The Imperial Council chamber was silent as the hologram played, showing the complete destruction of their diplomatic fleet. 12 council members sat around the massive black table, their faces lit by the blue glow of the replay. High Commander Marcus stood at the head of the table, his hands gripping the edge until his knuckles turned white. 43 ships lost, he said quietly. 3,000 of our best warriors dead. Against primitives. General Peter, the Empire's most experienced military commander, stepped forward. His scared face showed real concern. Not primitives, sir. We were wrong about them. Very wrong. The hologram changed to show detailed analysis of the human attacks. Look at their tactics, Peter continued. Those weren't random attacks. Every move was calculated. They knew exactly how our shields worked, how our formations would react, where our weak points were. Impossible, one council member protested. We've never lost a ship before. How could they know our weaknesses? Thomas, the intelligence officer who had first warned Marcus, spoke up from his corner of the room. Because they've been studying us, just like they study everything. He waved his hand, and new images appeared in the hologram. Look at their entertainment broadcasts from the past 50 years. Their fiction, their games, their military simulations. They'd been practicing fighting us since they first spotted our scout ships. The council members watched in growing unease as Thomas showed them clips from human movies, games, and military exercises. All of them featured scenarios about fighting technologically superior aliens. Some of the tactics shown were eerily similar to what had just been used against their fleet. While we watched them, Thomas explained, they watched us back. Every time our scouts observed them, they were learning. Their civilians play games about defeating superior forces. Their children read stories about overcoming impossible odds. Their military trains for scenarios we thought were impossible. General Peter nodded grimly. They don't fight like we do. The Empire fights with honor, with proper formations and direct engagement. Humans. He paused, searching for the right words. Humans fight to win. Nothing more, nothing less. Then we'll show them what a real war looks like, Marcus declared. Prepare the main fleet. All of it. A murmur of shock went through the council. The main fleet had never been fully deployed before. 10,000 ships, the full might of the Imperial Navy. Sir, Thomas tried one last time. There's something else you need to see. He brought up new data, showing human historical battles. In their history, when a smaller force faced a larger one, the smaller force won 37% of the time. When the smaller force used unconventional tactics, that number rose to 63%. Those were primitive battles, another council member dismissed, fought with simple weapons. No, Thomas corrected. The principles remained the same throughout their history. The more advanced the weapons became, the more opportunities they found for unconventional warfare. They turned simple mining tools into weapons that destroyed our ships. They used maintenance nanobots as a devastating weapon. Everything in their system, no matter how harmless it seems, can be turned into a weapon. Marcus stood silent for a moment, then made his decision. The main fleet deploys in 3 days. We will crush them with overwhelming force. No more games, no more diplomacy. As the council members filed out, General Peter stayed behind with Thomas. You've studied them the most, Peter said quietly. What do you think they'll do when they see our main fleet? Thomas looked at the tactical displays still floating in the air. They'll do what they've always done throughout their history. They'll adapt. They'll find weaknesses we didn't know we had. They'll turn our strength against us. Can we win? Thomas smiled sadly. That's the wrong question, General. The right question is, what will it cost us to find out? As the Empire prepared its largest fleet in history, emergency transmissions raced between human colonies, but they weren't messages of fear or panic. They were battle plans, strategies, and most worryingly for the Empire, designs for new weapons that no one had ever seen before. The real war was about to begin, and only one side truly understood what that meant. The Imperial main fleet moved through space like a massive silver cloud. 10,000 ships, arranged in perfect formation, headed toward the Sol system. At their current speed, they would arrive in 3 days. Captain David of the supply ship Iron Crown watched the tactical display with growing concern. This was the 8th supply convoy they'd lost contact with in 2 days. Another convoy gone silent. Sir, his communication officer reported. No distress signal, no debris field. They're just gone. David rubbed his temples. The Empire had never needed to worry about supply lines before. Their ships could operate for months without resupply, and no enemy had ever dared to attack their logistics. The humans, it seemed, didn't play by those rules. Sir, his sensor officer suddenly called out. Movement at bearing 340. David rushed to the screen, but there was nothing there. Just another loose asteroid tumbling through space. Then he noticed something odd about its rotation. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted, but it was too late. The asteroid's surface shattered, revealing it was hollow. Dozens of small human ships burst out like angry wasps from a broken nest. They were painted black, almost impossible to see against the darkness of space. Multiple targets, the weapons officer shouted. They're using some kind of stealth technology. The human ships didn't try to destroy the Imperial vessels. Instead, they fired strange devices that attached to the ship's hulls. Within seconds, the Imperial engines began to fail. They're not weapons, the science officer realized. They're parasites. Mechanical parasites eating our fuel. Before they could react, the human ships vanished again, slipping away into the darkness. They left behind 6 Imperial supply ships, dead in space, their fuel tanks completely drained. In his command ship at the head of the main fleet, High Commander Marcus received the reports with growing fury. 112 supply ships lost in just 2 days. The humans were striking everywhere at once, using hit-and-run tactics that the Empire had never faced before. Sir, General Peter reported, we've lost contact with our forward scouts. All of them. Marcus slammed his fist on his command console. How? How are they moving so fast? Our ships are superior in every way. They're not trying to be our ships, Thomas explained, studying the attack patterns. They're using our size against us. Our ships are designed for power, not speed. Their ships are small, fast, and nearly impossible to detect. As if to prove his point, new alarms started blaring. The fleet's outer sensors had detected something massive approaching. Hundreds of asteroids, all on collision courses with the fleet. Impossible, Marcus whispered. They're throwing rocks at us. But they weren't just rocks. As the fleet's guns destroyed the first wave of asteroids, they broke apart to reveal they were filled with a strange metal dust. The dust spread through space, coating the hulls of nearby Imperial ships. Sir, the science officer's voice shook. That dust, it's interfacing with our computer systems. It's some kind of physical computer virus. Across the fleet, ships began behaving erratically. Some fired on their neighbors, their targeting systems hijacked by the viral dust. Others jumped to random coordinates, their navigation computers corrupted. Fall back, Marcus ordered. We need to regroup. But the humans weren't done. As the fleet tried to retreat, they revealed their final surprise. The empty space behind the fleet wasn't empty anymore. Thousands of mines had been placed there while they were distracted by the asteroids, forming a massive trap. How do we fight an enemy that turns empty space itself into a weapon? One officer asked in despair. Thomas watched the chaos unfold with a grim expression. "We don't," he said quietly. "We're trying to fight a conventional war against an enemy that abandoned conventional warfare centuries ago. Everything we see as a rule, they see as a weakness to exploit." The mighty Imperial fleet, which had never known defeat, found itself scattered and bleeding, still 3 days away from their target. And somewhere out there in the darkness, human ships waited, ready to strike again. The Empire was learning a hard lesson. In space, there was no such thing as a fair fight. In the emergency command center deep beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Stone watched the holographic display of the battle with quiet satisfaction. Hundreds of red dots representing Imperial ships blinked out one by one. "Report from the mining division, sir," his aide said. "The modified drilling rigs are working better than expected. Imperial shields have no defense against concentrated plasma beams designed to cut through asteroids." Stone nodded. When the war began, humans hadn't had many dedicated warships. Instead, they had millions of tools, machines, and civilian devices that could be turned into weapons. Every mining ship became a battleship. Every communication satellite became a weapon platform. Even space garbage was transformed into deadly projectiles. The door slid open, and Dr. Anna walked in. She was the head of Earth's Xenobiology division, and her team had been studying the Empire for years. "You need to see this," she said, bringing up new data on the main screen. "We've finished our analysis of the Imperial combat footage. Look at their soldiers." The screen showed Imperial troops in combat training. Their movements were perfect, exactly following their military manual. Every soldier moved the same way, used the same tactics, followed the same patterns. "They're too perfect," Anna explained. "The Empire has spent so long being the strongest that they've forgotten how to adapt. Their soldiers are trained to follow orders exactly, never to think for themselves." Stone understood immediately. "While our soldiers are trained to improvise." "Exactly," Anna smiled. "Look at this." She showed footage from a recent battle. An Imperial cruiser had cornered 3 small human ships. The Imperial captain followed standard procedure: disable the engines, then demand surrender. But the human ships had deliberately shut down their own engines and were drifting. When the Imperial ship moved closer to capture them, all 3 human ships vented their oxygen supplies explosively. The sudden burst of gas acted like thrusters, sending them spinning in different directions while firing from unexpected angles. The Imperial ship, following its programming to target disabled vessels, couldn't adapt fast enough. It was destroyed in seconds. Every Imperial ship, every soldier, every weapon is designed to be perfect at its job, Anna continued. But they can only do their job one way. If that way doesn't work, they don't know how to change. Stone finished. But how did they build such a huge empire if they're so inflexible? Because until now, they never needed to change. Their technology was so advanced that brute force always worked. They're like a boxer who's won every fight with a single punch. They never learned what to do when that punch doesn't work. On the main screen, more battles played out. Human ships used tactics that seemed insane to the Empire. They hid inside gas clouds, used solar flares as cover, and even deliberately crashed small drones into each other to create debris fields that damaged Imperial sensors. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the Imperial fleet is regrouping. They're forming their standard attack pattern." Stone actually smiled. Standard. They still think standard tactics will work. He pressed a button, sending new orders to the fleet. Across the solar system, human ships began moving in seemingly random patterns. Solar power stations turned their mirrors to create blinding flashes. Mining stations released clouds of metallic dust. Communication arrays broadcast false signals. To the Empire, it looked like chaos. To humans, It was just another day of thinking outside the box. They still don't understand, Anna said, watching the Imperial fleet try to make sense of the confusion. We're not fighting them with better weapons or stronger ships. We're fighting them with creativity. Stone nodded. The Empire spent thousands of years perfecting their way of war. We spent thousands of years finding new ways to fight. They learned to be perfect. We learned to be unpredictable. As if to prove his point, alerts suddenly blared. The Imperial fleet had fallen for another trap, charging straight into what they thought was a defenseless human colony. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by hundreds of automated cargo ships, each one carrying a makeshift but deadly weapon. Send the message, Stone ordered. The same one as always. Across all frequencies in every language the Empire knew, the humans broadcast. You were warned. Run. High Commander Marcus stood in the ruins of his command center, watching his mighty fleet fall apart. The Empire's most advanced warships, pride of the Imperial Navy, were being defeated not by superior weapons, but by tricks and traps that no civilized race would even consider using. Sir, Thomas reported, his voice tired. We've lost contact with Battle Group 7. They were pursuing what they thought were damaged human ships. But what? Marcus demanded. The damaged ships were empty. Automated. They led our forces into an asteroid field, then detonated their reactor cores. The explosions created an electromagnetic storm that disabled our ship's navigation systems. Thomas paused. The humans had hidden their real ships inside hollowed-out asteroids. When our ships were blind, He didn't need to finish. Marcus could see the casualty reports scrolling across his screens. 3,000 years, Marcus whispered. The Empire has stood for 3,000 years, never defeated, never challenged. How are they doing this? A new alert suddenly blared through the command center. On the main screen, strange readings appeared around their bioengineered ships, the pride of Imperial technology, warships grown from living tissue that could repair themselves. Sir, the science officer shouted in panic. The bioships. They're getting sick. Marcus stared in disbelief. Sick? That's impossible. They're immune to all known diseases. It's not a natural disease, the science officer explained, horror in his voice. The humans released some kind of engineered virus. It's rewriting the bioship's genetic code. They're turning on each other. Across the battlefield, the magnificent living ships of the Empire began attacking their own fleet. Their organic weapons, designed to adapt and grow stronger, were now being used against their own creators. How? Marcus demanded. How did they even know how to make such a virus? Thomas pulled up a report on his screen. They didn't create it for this war. They had thousands of versions ready. They'd been practicing genetic warfare on themselves for centuries. Every disease that ever threatened them became a lesson, a template for a weapon. Before Marcus could respond, another crisis erupted. The fleet's artificial intelligence network, which coordinated all their ships' movements, began acting strangely. The AI is compromised, the computer officer reported. The humans, they didn't try to destroy it. They're feeding it data, historical battles, combat simulations, tactical analysis. What's wrong with that? Marcus asked. The AI is learning from them. It's studying how humans fight. And it's concluding that our tactics are flawed. It's trying to change our battle plans. The Empire's own command system was being turned against them, attempting to force their ships to fight like humans, unpredictably, creatively, dirty. But the worst was yet to come. Across the fleet, Imperial soldiers began receiving transmissions, not attacks or threats, but information. The humans were broadcasting the truth about the war, showing Imperial troops how their rigid tactics were failing, how their mighty technology meant nothing against human ingenuity. Morale is collapsing, the personnel officer reported. The soldiers, they're starting to question their training. Some are trying to improvise, to fight like humans. It's creating chaos in our formations. Marcus watched helplessly as his perfect military machine fell apart. The Empire's greatest strength, its uniformity, its discipline, its adherence to proven tactics, had become its greatest weakness. "Send the retreat signal," he finally ordered, his voice hollow. "Sir." Thomas looked up in surprise. "The Empire has never retreated. The Empire has never faced humans before," Marcus replied. "Send it. Get our people out. Anyone who can still run." As the remnants of the once mighty Imperial fleet turned to flee, they received one final transmission from Earth. It wasn't a taunt or a threat. It was a simple lesson, one that humans had learned through countless wars among themselves. The most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapons, but the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to protect. "You threatened our home. What did you expect us to do?" The Empire had started this war expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had awakened humanity's oldest and most terrible talent, finding new ways to win at any cost. 1 month after the retreat, the Imperial Council gathered again. The chamber, once gleaming with pride and power, now felt cold and quiet. Only 7 of the 12 council seats were filled. The others had been lost in the war. High Commander Marcus stood before them, giving his final report. His silver uniform was no longer perfect. He had stopped caring about such things after watching his fleet die. "The human conflict has cost us 4,832 ships," he said, his voice heavy. 2,300,000 Imperial citizens dead or missing. 43 colonies have declared independence, believing we can no longer protect them. The council members sat in shocked silence. The Empire had lost more in 1 month against humans than in 3,000 years of expansion. "How?" one council member asked. "How did we fail so completely?" Thomas stepped forward, now promoted to Chief of Intelligence after his warnings about humans had proven correct. "We didn't just face their military," he explained. "We faced their entire civilization. Every human, from their children to their elders, knows how to fight, how to improvise, how to win against superior forces." He activated the hologram, showing scenes from the war. Their miners turned asteroids into weapons. Their farmers used crop-spraying ships to spread nanobots. Their doctors designed viruses that turned our bioships against us. Their video game designers created AIs that predicted our tactics. "But they're just one species," another council member protested, "confined to one small sector of space." "That's why they won," Marcus said quietly. "We spread our forces across thousands of worlds, ruling through fear and power. Humans stayed in their home system, turning every rock, every piece of space debris, every scrap of technology into a potential weapon." Thomas nodded. "We found this in their historical records." An ancient human leader said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." They built their entire system into a fortress while making it look harmless. By the time we realized the truth, it was too late. The council chamber's main screen lit up, showing the new Imperial classification of human space. The simple, standard Class C civilization label had been replaced with something new. APE Explorator Species, Extreme Danger, NATO Engagement Authorized. Below it was a detailed analysis. Humans appear primitive because they focus on practical technology over aesthetic advancement. They value function over form. Their ships look crude because every spare resource goes to making them more deadly. Their stations look basic because they're designed to transform into fortresses. They don't build things to look advanced. They build them to win wars. Marcus stepped forward. "I request permission to establish a buffer zone between Imperial and human space. A neutral zone, 50 light-years wide. To protect them from us." A council member asked. "No," Marcus replied grimly. "To protect us from them." The council voted unanimously to approve the buffer zone. As the meeting ended, one young council member asked Thomas a final question. "Will they expand? Will they become like us, conquering other worlds?" Thomas shook his head. No, that's what we finally understood too late. Humans don't want an empire. They don't want to rule. They just want to be left alone. And they'll do anything to keep their freedom. Later that day, Marcus stood at his office window, watching ships repair the damage from the war. A message from Earth appeared on his screen. The humans had agreed to the buffer zone. The message was simple and clear. We accept your terms. Remember, we didn't want this war. We warned you to run. Next time, listen. There are worse things in our history than what we showed you. We've spent thousands of years learning to fight. We've spent thousands of years learning to kill. But what we do best is survive. Remember that, and we can have peace. Marcus sent a one-word reply. Understood. As he watched the sun set on the Imperial capital, he realized that the Empire had learned its most important lesson in 3,000 years. Sometimes, the most advanced civilization isn't the one with the fanciest technology or the biggest fleet. Sometimes, it's the one that remembers its primitive past and keeps its ancient survival skills sharp. The humans had never needed to evolve beyond their warrior past. They had simply learned to combine it with their technological present. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy.